Hello, welcome to Unbelievable Tales.
Who notices a hotel cleaner answering a phone call in Chinese and sends for her the very next day. Mei Lin never meant to be overheard. She was just whispering to her grandmother between shifts, her cleaning cart parked in the hallway like always. But what she didn't know was that the man standing behind the door, the CEO of a billion-dollar corporation, was fluent enough to recognize something extraordinary in her voice. The next morning, she was called upstairs, not to be fired, but to change her life. What started as a simple translation request would unfold into a journey of trust, identity, and an unexpected love that neither of them saw coming. Before we dive into the story, comment below where you're watching from. Enjoy the story, everyone. The 11th floor of the Fairmount Grand Hotel didn't get much foot traffic. Most guests who stayed there didn't wander. They expected things to come to them. Room service, tailored suits, absolute quiet. Mei Lin had long since learned to be invisible up here. Move fast, clean faster, don't make a sound. She liked it that way. It gave her time to think, to breathe. That night, her cart was neatly parked by Suite 1118. Her earbuds were tucked away. She wasn't allowed to wear them on the job. But the ringtone from her grandmother's old flip phone buzzed in the deep pocket of her cleaning apron. Just one quick answer, she told herself, glancing up and down the empty hall. She answered in a whisper, pressing the phone close. "Grandma, I can't talk long. Are you okay?" Her voice was soft, natural, rhythmic like a lullaby, the kind that always calmed her grandmother when the old woman got confused. May kept speaking in short sentences, listening for signs of panic or forgetfulness. She didn't hear the sound of a door cracking open behind her. Inside Suite 1118, Daniel Song had frozen mid-step. He hadn't meant to eavesdrop. He'd simply stepped out to take a call, but something about the cadence of the words outside his door pulled at something deeper. He understood just enough Mandarin to recognize the dialect, Taishanese. His mother had spoken it when she was tired, when her guard was down. Hearing it now, at night, in this place, jolted something in him. He stepped closer to the door, just slightly ajar now. The woman on the phone didn't sound rushed. She sounded caring, completely unaware she had an audience. Then came silence, followed by a sigh. "I'll visit next week, I promise. Don't forget to take your pills. I love you." Click. Then the shuffle of shoes and the quiet roll of the cleaning cart down the carpet. Daniel blinked once, then closed the door. The next morning, May was wiping down the brass elevator buttons on the ground floor when someone in a dark blazer approached her. She straightened immediately, thinking she might be in trouble. "You're Mei Lin?" the woman asked. She nodded. "You've been requested upstairs. Suite 1118. Mr. Song's assistant will brief you there." May's throat went dry. She didn't even remember leaving a cart near his door. Had she made too much noise? Had he heard her on the phone? Her hands instinctively wiped her uniform clean. She almost said she was busy, but her feet were already moving. Suite 1118 looked different in daylight. More dangerous somehow. Daniel Song was seated at a low glass table when she entered. He stood immediately, buttoning his jacket like a reflex. "Miss Lin." His voice was firm, not unkind. She nodded, palms damp. "Yes, sir. I didn't mean to." "You speak Mandarin," he interrupted. She froze. "Ah, yes. At home." He gave the faintest smile. "You're fluent." She hesitated. "I grew up with my grandmother. I'm scheduled to meet with a group of partners from Chengdu tomorrow." Our translator backed out. I'd like you to sit in. May blinked. I'm sorry. You speak the dialect. I heard it last night. Her cheeks burned. That was personal. I didn't mean for. He raised a hand. You weren't doing anything wrong. But I have a meeting to salvage and not much time. I'll pay you separately. 1 hour. Clean uniform. You'd just be translating, nothing more. Her mind reeled. This couldn't be real. I haven't done formal work like that before. He studied her for a long moment. Do you understand contracts? Business vocabulary? May hesitated, then nodded slowly. Yes. She didn't explain that she once studied linguistics in Shanghai before everything fell apart, or that she had translated academic papers for side income when she first came to the States. She didn't mention the scholarship she lost when her student visa expired. None of that mattered now. Daniel seemed satisfied. My assistant will brief you. The meeting is tomorrow at 9. She left in a daze. She didn't sleep that night, not because she was nervous, though she was, but because part of her brain still insisted this couldn't be happening. People like her didn't get sent for. They didn't sit at boardroom tables. They scrubbed them clean after everyone left. At 8:57 the next morning, she stood outside the same suite with her hair neatly pulled back, wearing a pressed blouse borrowed from her cousin. Her name badge still clung to her coat pocket like an identity she hadn't quite shed. Inside, the room had been transformed. No longer a guest suite, it now held a table of laptops, files, sleek coffee service, and 3 seated men who looked like they owned cities. Daniel stood near the window, arms crossed. When May stepped in, he glanced up, and for a moment, just a flicker, his face softened. Gentlemen, this is our interpreter. No one questioned it. May took her seat, spine straight, heart racing. And then she spoke, fluently, smoothly, with precision and grace. She translated back and forth without missing a beat, adjusting tone and nuance like a professional. Daniel didn't say a word, but twice she caught him watching her. Not just listening, but reading her, seeing something past the words. When the meeting ended, the men from Chengdu stood and bowed politely to her. One even complimented her pronunciation. Daniel waited until they'd all left before he turned to her. You were remarkable, he said quietly. May opened her mouth, but words failed. And for the first time in years, someone looked at her not as a worker, but as someone worth seeing. She didn't tell anyone at the hotel. Not her supervisor, not her cousin who worked nights in the laundry room, not even her grandmother. Some things felt too fragile to say out loud, like a dream you feared would vanish the moment it hit the air. But something had shifted. It wasn't just the meeting. It was the way she walked afterward, as if her spine remembered it once stood tall, or the way she caught herself smiling at strangers in the hallway, forgetting for a moment that they never looked back. Daniel's assistant called again 2 days later. This time, it wasn't for a one-off translation. A new delegation was flying in from Taipei, and Daniel wanted her to assist with 3 days of meetings. Full schedule, full pay. She nearly said no, not because she didn't want to, but because fear still whispered, they'll find out. They'll say you don't belong. But she went, and this time she didn't borrow a blouse. She wore the blue one she'd hidden in the back of her closet, a gift from her mother, long before airports and consulates and lost paperwork. Daniel greeted her with a nod but didn't rush into business. He asked if she wanted tea. He asked if she'd eaten. And when she said yes, surprised, he smiled faintly, like the answer mattered more than he let on. The meetings blurred together. Charts, negotiations, moments of tension broken only by her calm translation. She didn't just speak the words. She shaped them, softened the edges, made people listen. And when the clients left each night, satisfied and impressed, Daniel didn't speak right away. But he lingered. "You don't just translate," he said quietly one evening as she gathered her notes. "You guide the conversation." "I've had practice," she replied, trying to sound casual. "With who?" "My grandmother," she said with a half smile. "She doesn't hear well. I've been translating her world since I was 10. He didn't laugh. He just nodded, slow and thoughtful, as if every part of her story mattered. They had dinner that night, not formally, not planned. He had asked if she wanted to grab something downstairs before the kitchen closed. She hesitated, then agreed. The restaurant was nearly empty. The waitstaff seemed surprised but didn't ask questions. She ordered noodles. He ordered sea bass. They spoke in English at first, safer, distant, but gradually shifted into Mandarin when the conversation turned to family. "My mother grew up in Kaohsiung," he said, stirring his tea. "She taught me Mandarin before she taught me English. Then you understand more than you let on. Enough to know your tones are perfect," he said, and for the first time she blushed. They talked for hours about language, home, the way silence could be a comfort or a cage. May forgot to check the time. She forgot she was supposed to be nobody. Until he said softly, "You ever think about doing this full time?" She blinked. "Interpreting. Working for me." Her breath caught. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't being polite. He meant it. I don't even have a resume. I don't care about paper," he said. "I care about instinct, clarity, the way you make people listen." May stared down at her tea. Her hands trembled slightly. "You don't know me," she whispered. "I'm trying to." That night she didn't sleep again. But this time it wasn't fear. It was possibility. 2 weeks passed. She translated at 3 more meetings. She sat beside him in 2 closed sessions with government officials. She even helped redraft an agreement that had stalled for months. And yet, she still cleaned rooms on alternate shifts. She didn't know how to say no to that part of herself yet. The part that didn't trust good things to last. Her cousin warned her gently, "People talk. You're being seen." May nodded but said nothing, until one day she came in to find her supervisor waiting. "You've been requested again," the woman said tightly. "But this time, Mr. Song asked to see you outside the hotel." May's blood went cold. "Outside?" The woman nodded. "A car's downstairs." May hesitated only for a second, then went. The car was sleek and black. The driver didn't speak, just opened the door. The office wasn't far. A mirrored tower that pierced the skyline like a blade. She'd walked past it before, never thinking she'd ever be inside. Not like this. She was escorted to the top floor. And there he was, not behind a desk, but by the window, jacket off, sleeves rolled, looking more tired than she'd ever seen him. "I didn't call you here for work," he said. She stood still, tense. "Then why?" He turned, and something in his expression, raw, quiet, uncertain, made her heart stutter. "Because I haven't stopped thinking about you," he said. Silence. "I know it's too soon. I know this breaks rules. But I also know what I feel when you walk into a room. And what I miss when you leave." May shook her head. "You don't know who I am." He stepped closer. "Then tell me." Her voice cracked. "I was supposed to be a professor. I lost everything coming here. I clean rooms to survive. I translate so I don't forget who I used to be. You didn't lose everything, he said. You just haven't used all of it yet. And when she looked up, really looked, she saw not a CEO, but a man, just a man, waiting for an answer. She didn't speak right away. Instead, May walked past him to the tall windows that overlooked the skyline. From here, the city looked silent, untouchable. But she knew better. She knew the layers beneath the lights, the late shifts, the quiet tears in locker rooms, the cheap takeout eaten in linen closets. That was the city she lived in. And this view didn't belong to her. Or maybe it did now. She turned slowly. If I say yes, what happens next? Daniel studied her, serious. You stop cleaning rooms. You start working with me as a cultural consultant, interpreter, whatever you want to call it. And if I don't? His answer came without pause. Then I'll still remember your voice when it changed a room. She laughed quietly. It wasn't a happy laugh. More like disbelief, cracked open just wide enough for hope to slip in. I need time, she said. Take it. He didn't try to touch her. Didn't make it dramatic. Just gave her the space to walk away. And she did, but not far. The next week, May kept her shifts. She folded towels and changed sheets like nothing had changed. But her mind wasn't in the hallways anymore. It kept drifting to his voice, to the offer, to the truth she was still afraid to own. Then one evening, while she was wiping down the elevator mirror, she heard two guests talking. The cleaning girl? Apparently she's some kind of spy or something. 1 minute she's scrubbing sinks, the next she's in the CEO's meetings. I heard she faked her credentials. May's breath caught. She turned away before they could see her face. Later that night, she found her locker had been emptied. Not by management, by someone petty. Her work shoes were gone. Her name badge bent. A single word scrawled on her notepad in red ink. Fake. She didn't cry. She went home, changed into clean clothes, and took the subway to the rooftop of an old building where she used to sit and watch the planes take off from across the river. She called her grandmother, who didn't answer, then sat there, knees pulled to her chest, and finally let herself feel it. Not shame, not guilt, grief for the version of herself that had believed silence would protect her. The next morning, she didn't go to the hotel. She went to Daniel's office. His assistant barely blinked before waving her through. Daniel stood from his desk when she walked in, tension lining his jaw. What happened? He asked. She held out the badge. Bent. Wordless. He took it without speaking. Is this what happens, she asked softly, when someone like me is seen by someone like you? He didn't look away. This happens when people are threatened by someone they don't understand. May's voice trembled. I don't want pity. You don't have it. Then why did you ask me here? Because I meant what I said. I want you here. I want to build something with you. Not just in meetings. In life. She froze. That's not what you said before. No, he admitted. It's not. But I didn't know how to say the rest of it until I thought I might lose you. Silence again. Only this time she didn't run from it. A week later, her new badge arrived. It read, May Lin, Cultural Liaison, International Relations. She wore it tucked into her new blazer, only showing it when she needed to. She moved between floors like a ghost with power. Her words still quiet, her presence still subtle, but now people turned to her for guidance. For clarity. Even for calm. Daniel kept his distance in public. Professional. Respectful. But his eyes always found her when a room went quiet. She knew his tells now, the half-second pause before he spoke, the way his fingers tapped twice when he was thinking of something he couldn't say. They never spoke of what almost happened. Not until that night in the hotel. There was a gala. Formal. Expensive. A sea of gowns and champagne and barely masked ambition. She was invited only as a translator for a visiting delegation. She wore black, simple silk borrowed from a friend with better taste. Her heels clicked softly on marble. Daniel was already there. Their eyes met across the room. But it wasn't until much later, long after speeches, after translations, after everyone had grown tired of pretending, that he found her in the corridor near the empty ballroom. He didn't say anything at first. Just stood beside her. May looked up at him. "You still owe me dinner. I owe you a lot more than that." She tilted her head. "Then start small." And he did. He reached for her hand. Not quickly. Not with force. But with intention. Like someone who'd waited long enough. She didn't let go of his hand. Not that night. They didn't go far, just down the back stairs to a quiet lounge 2 floors below, one usually reserved for private events. The lights were low. The music soft. No one noticed them. No one cared. Daniel ordered tea for both of them. She smiled at that. "You remembered." "I remember a lot," he said, and something in his voice wrapped gently around her ribs like warmth. They didn't talk about the company. Or the hotel. Or her badge, now a silent fixture on her jacket. Instead, they talked about favorite books, recipes they'd both ruined, the first things they ever translated as kids. She told him about the way her grandmother used to recite poetry over soup. He told her about the time he misinterpreted a contract in Seoul and almost bought a fishing boat. And when the tea cooled and the world fell away, he looked at her like a man trying to memorize a moment. "Do you still feel like you don't belong?" he asked. May didn't answer right away. "I think I belonged before," she said. "I just stopped believing I did." Daniel nodded. "You were always more than your badge." Her smile was small, private. "So were you." They didn't define anything that night. No declarations. No plans. But after that evening, something shifted. He walked her home for the first time. Not in a black car with tinted windows, but beside her on foot, through quiet streets lined with street vendors and laundry flapping from windows. When they reached her building, narrow, 6 floors, creaky elevator, he didn't ask to come up. He just said, "Call me when you want to walk again." And she did. Almost every day. Spring came. The hotel grew busier. International partnerships expanded. May's role became official. She translated, negotiated, mediated, but she also helped with deeper things, cultural codes, tone, pauses that meant more than words ever could. People respected her now. Not because Daniel said they should, but because she never asked for it. She just earned it. And through it all, he never pushed. Never presumed. Sometimes he brought her coffee before meetings. Sometimes she left sticky notes with proverbs on his desk. Sometimes they passed like colleagues. Other times like something more. But nothing was spoken until her grandmother fell ill. It was a Tuesday. The call came in just before midnight. May rushed to the hospital, her jacket thrown over pajamas, Daniel already calling ahead to have a car sent. He met her there anyway, no tie, coat half-buttoned, eyes dark with worry. He sat beside her in the white waiting room as she stared at the floor, fists clenched around her phone. "She's the only family I have," she whispered. "You have me." The words came out so naturally, so quietly that she almost didn't hear them at first. When she turned to him, tears standing still in her lashes, she didn't speak. She just leaned into him. And he held her like he'd been waiting to do it for a very long time. Her grandmother recovered slowly. May stayed with her for a week, working remotely from a folding table beside the bed. Daniel sent soup. He texted twice a day, never too much, never too little. Just enough to remind her he was there. When she finally returned to the city, he met her on the street near her apartment. "You didn't have to wait," she said. "I did anyway." She looked at him. Looked into him. And then, without permission, without warning, she kissed him. Soft. Centered. Unafraid. When she pulled back, she said, "You didn't ask what I want." He blinked, dazed. "What do you want?" "To choose this. Not because it's safe. But because it's real." Daniel's voice was hoarse. "Then stay." "I already am." From then on, nothing felt like pretending. They didn't broadcast anything. But they didn't hide either. There were rumors, of course. Whispers. But May walked with her head high. And Daniel didn't let anyone speak her name with anything less than respect. Their relationship grew slowly, intentionally, like something being built with care, not urgency. And still, there were days she struggled. Days she questioned if love could truly exist between two people who had lived such different lives. And Daniel, always patient, always still, would take her hand and say the same thing. Then let's live the rest of them together and find out. The summer was hot and unruly. The hotel bustled with tourists and corporate events, but May no longer moved through its halls as a shadow. She was a name now, a presence. Staff turned to her when translations stalled, when misunderstandings threatened deals, when something delicate needed a steady voice. She wore a new badge now, not because it had changed her, but because it matched who she'd finally become. And through it all, Daniel remained quietly at her side. They didn't flaunt their relationship, but it lived in the little things, the way he paused when she walked into a room, the way she reached for his tie not before a big meeting, the way they lingered a little too long after conferences, laughing softly over tea in empty boardrooms. But it wasn't perfect. Nothing real ever is. There were articles, whispers, accusations of favoritism. A board member made a passive remark about hotel girls climbing ladders. May heard it. Daniel shut it down. He offered to step back, to resign, but she said no. If I can face cleaning rooms, I can face this, she told him. So they didn't run. They stayed. Together. Her grandmother passed that autumn. Peacefully. Holding May's hand, her eyes soft with pride. You sound like your mother, she whispered, her last words in Mandarin. And stronger. May held on long after her grandmother let go. Daniel flew out that night. No meetings. No questions. Just a quiet knock on her childhood apartment door and arms that didn't let go. After the funeral, they walked through the fields behind the old neighborhood, May's fingers curled around the pendant her grandmother had worn every day. She wanted me to be brave, May said, voice raw. You are, Daniel replied. I didn't used to believe that. I always did. She looked up at him. Why me? His answer was simple. Because when you spoke, I listened. And I haven't wanted to stop. 6 months passed. She bought a tiny apartment with light that poured through windows at just the right angle. He started walking to work more often, sometimes just to see her off. They still kept work and personal separate, but the lines blurred in the way that lives do when they grow around each other. One winter evening, she stood in the same hallway where it had all begun. The 11th floor. Cart parked. Cleaner's uniform long gone. She wasn't working that night, she was just walking through, remembering. Daniel stepped out of the suite beside her. No jacket, just a soft gray sweater and that familiar pause in his breath when he saw her. You still think about that night? He asked. She smiled. Sometimes. I never stopped. He held something behind his back. She raised an eyebrow. Another contract? No. He pulled out a small, flat box. Inside was a silver ring. Simple. Unpolished. Like her grandmother's pendant. I know we've crossed too many lines already, he said, voice unsteady. But if you let me, I want to build a life with you. One we don't have to translate. Tears welled in her eyes. You always say the right thing, she whispered. Only with you. She didn't answer with words. Just reached for his hand, slipped the ring on her own finger, and kissed him like the silence between them was finally at peace. A year later, May stood on a stage at a language equity summit in San Francisco. Her name badge read, May Lin, Director of Global Cultural Strategy. In the audience, Daniel sat in the back row, beaming like a man who'd seen the storm and chosen to walk through it with her. And when she spoke into the microphone, her words were firm and clear, in English, then in Mandarin, then in the soft dialect of her grandmother's hometown. No translation needed. Sometimes love doesn't announce itself with grand gestures. Sometimes it begins in a hallway with a phone call in a forgotten tongue. Sometimes it starts when someone sees you, really sees you, even when the world tells you to stay small. And sometimes, if you're lucky, he hears your voice and never stops listening.
Bye. and don't forget to subscribe to the channel.